Welcome to Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. Well, we have day 3 of the Speaker of the House vote coming up. We have some viewer comments and questions to go over, and just a whole lot of developments on the should Trump be criminally charged front. The answer is yeah. But he's making it so that there is a pressing need to do it quickly, because the danger he's posing is real and specific. We're going to break it all down. This is Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. My name's Jake. Let's get right to it. So, given the speaker vote coming up today, there was a very good question posed by a viewer, and it is this. Baker Charles says, do you know if there is any provision for the Dems putting in a new speaker if the balance of power in the House shifts? The federal prosecutorial handbook states that prosecutors can accept a resignation from a position of public trust as part of a non-prosecution agreement or a plea deal. I believe that's referring to George Santos. That's a very good question. There is doubt as to whether or not he's going to be a representative come the summer. Brazil currently would very much like him to return to Brazil for facing criminal charges, because he skipped out on them. Unfortunately, the answer to that is simply no. It's a legitimate thought here, but the way it works is that when the election happens, it is the first time the House meets following an election that a speaker is nominated. After that, if there's something like a special election in an individual district, it does not affect the nominee. Now, if the speaker themselves has criminal charges, and bear in mind that's a real possibility given that MAGA seems to have a lot of influence over who the speaker is, that changes things. Then there is indeed another vote. And combine that with the fact that Santos may be out of the House, that may be yet another path Hakeem Jeffries has towards being Speaker of the House. But in the short term, no, unfortunately, it will not mean that a new vote will be taken, even if Santos is gone. So the choice yesterday that the MAGA folks seem to have landed on hadn't even come up in the previous day, hadn't even been mentioned. Let's have a look at Coach D from Midas Touch. Again, Midas Touch makes an appearance on our show. The network, I mean, that channel is fantastic. They're just coming out with hit after hit. I got nothing but praise for them. Let's listen to Coach D.
What's up, everyone? Coach D speaks here. So Byron Donalds is being used by the Republican Party because he's black. That's all to it. They keep nominating him for Speaker of the House because they know they don't have the votes to have him elected, but they want to be able to say that they nominated a black guy. This is why they keep mentioning that he's black. Now, I brought that up on Twitter earlier today, and people had the nerve to say that they're not mentioning that he's black and only Democrats do stuff like that. So may I present to you Exhibit
Maybe
A?
corporate Dems.
Now, here we are, and for the first time in history, there have been 2 Black Americans placed into the nomination for Speaker of the House.
I do want to say, I don't think in and of itself that's a bad thing. It does show if that is, if that's a genuine nomination, if they intend for this person to get the position, it does show progress. So I'm not fully against them touting, hey, look, we're the party known for racist stuff. We're nominating a black guy. But there's a hitch coming, of course, because this is America in 2023 and everything has to be depressing. He does not look pleased.
So yeah, that was Chip Roy nominating Byron Donalds. And it makes you wonder if they got together last night and thought, you know what? Since the Democrats have Hakeem Jeffries, maybe we should get Byron Donalds. Yeah, that would be a great idea. And then you have Matt Gaetz, who has said some of the most racist things about Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, and other black people who were killed by police officers, standing there clapping and trying to get people to give him a standing ovation for engaging in the political theater of nominating a black guy just because he's black. But if that's not enough for you, let me present to you Exhibit B, because this is even freaking worse.
And we can also make history today by making the first...
Will the House be in order?
By electing the first Black Republican Speaker of the House.
Ugh. Uncomfortable.
Yes, thank you. Now, as my colleagues probably know, the first black members of Congress to serve in this body were Republicans. Were Republicans.
So dishonest.
As a matter of fact, you probably also know that Frederick Douglass, who went and worked with Abraham Lincoln to...
Back when the Republicans were the liberal party, conservatives have always been the enemy of pretty much everybody.
Emancipate the people of color in this country, said he would
Including other
never be
conservatives.
anything but a Republican, would never be anything but a
Just poor
Republican.
ones.
Okay, so let's address this bullshit about the first black members of Congress
Get him,
being
Coach.
Republican, and about how Frederick Douglass said that he would only be a Republican. Republicans always like to point this type of stuff out, and they always want to gloss over the fact that like 1940s, the Democrat and Republican ideologies were the opposite of what they are today. Today's Democrats were Republicans until they walked away from the Republican Party and formed the Dixiecrats sometime after the New Deal.
Southern
And Frederick
strategy in the
Douglass,
60s.
he was during that time as well. In fact, Abraham Lincoln, who he helped with emancipation, would be a Democrat today as well. And furthermore, there have been over 130 Democrat members of Congress and only 30 Republicans, and many of them were before the ideology switch. And let's just be real here. Which party do racists support? Like really? Like the KKK literally posted a news article in support of Donald Trump.
Yes.
So quit with the freaking lying to the American people about all this crap. Black people don't support the Republican Party because the Republican Party typically legislates against the black community.
True.
Here's another reason I know that they're not actually serious about nominating Byron Donalds. They didn't nominate him yesterday. And Byron Donalds voted for Kevin McCarthy yesterday. So they probably made some type of deal with him to be the token black nominee so that he would cross over to their side. Period.
Our blue...
I mean, perfect. That's personal opinion. That's exactly correct. Yeah, Republicans. You have to judge either of these parties by what they actually do. Republicans have consistently pushed legislation that is harmful to black Americans. No other way to put it. If anybody suggests police reform, Republicans are against it. Doesn't matter what it is. If somebody wants to measure, for example, how many police shootings there are in our country, Republicans try to throw a wrench in the machinery. They do everything they can to make life harder for black folks. To a degree that I honestly, there are times I don't understand why. Like, I know they need somebody to scapegoat. That's their whole strategy. F up the government, blame it on some minority. But it genuinely feels like a passion for some of these scumbags. Glad that Coach D let him have it. I'd love to see more from him. I hope to God he stops doing the truck and sunglasses thing. I don't know what's up with that, but hey, what's most important is the message, and he's got a good one. Another viewer commented this. This was on a video I did about Ari Melber slamming Merrick Garland's inaction. He says the time to slam Garland's inaction was about a year ago. Now the time has come to demand his removal for gross negligence. Boom. And dereliction of duty. Negligence and dereliction of duty. Another boom. He should possibly even face corruption charges. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. 100%. I believe I have the DOJ contact link in the description. Feel free to use it. You want to know what you should talk about? Well, Ring of Fire just talked about something I think we should also discuss. Trump is now engaging in stochastic terrorism. He has been for a while. But he's singling out the election workers. Specifically, there were two that testified. A mother and daughter didn't get paid to be election workers. And, I mean, they're examples of exactly what you would want a good American citizen to be. They engage in local politics as a hobby because they give a damn. Simple as that. He used the handing off of a piece of candy, to make them targets of his insane base. And then he's back at it on Truth Social. Let's listen to Ring of Fire.
Donald Trump, seemingly unprovoked, posted a rant on Truth Social this week where he attacked a Georgia election worker by the name of Ruby Freeman. And in his attack, which I will read in just a moment, but Donald Trump accused Ms. Freeman of not only rigging the Georgia election, but also of lying to investigators. Here is what Donald Trump had to say. Wow, has anyone seen the Ruby Freeman contradictions of her sworn testimony? Now this is big stuff. Look what was captured by Cobb County Police body cameras on January 4th, 2021. And everything they are saying is false. Everything from the quote-unquote suitcases of the ballot boxes to the way we open them back up, everything they said was false. The FBI reached out to me only to clear my social media. Evidence tampering? Count was low. It was really low. Now it gets really bad.
Okay. That right there is a former president targeting American citizens for, at the very least, harassment. But we all know, because they have demonstrated this. I give you Nancy Pelosi's husband getting bashed in the head with a hammer. We all know there is a high likelihood of violence when he does things like this. These women specifically said they were afraid when they testified in front of the January 6th committee. They are wise to be afraid. This is a dangerous situation he has put them in, and it's made more dangerous by the fact that Merrick Garland is incompetent. There's no good answer for why Trump is not in handcuffs right now. For that alone, there should be breaking news this morning that he has been tossed in the back of a police cruiser. For that alone. Viewer comment earlier said gross negligence. I agree. I have no notes on that. I agree. That is exactly correct.
Kind of hard to follow most of that, but he continues. Boom, under the table, cut the zip ties to scan them so the number would go up. So that's how the number was created, by the ballots going through the scanner. I do want an attorney. It's all a fraud. Everything they are saying is false, from the suitcases of the ballot boxes to why we opened them back up. Everything they said was false. They got Ruby's 7 top D.C. lawyers and protection from the FBI again. Why? She then changed her statements. Lied. Trouble for Ruby.
Mother.
What will the great state of Georgia do with the Ruby Freeman mess? Here's the thing about Ruby Freeman. First of all, she's been totally vindicated in all of this. She did not do anything wrong.
Yep.
Her and her daughter, Shay Moss, came back into the office to continue doing the counting with everybody else. They had stored the ballots under the table. When they got in to recount them, they moved the boxes to the top of the table so they could reach them, and they continued the ballot counting. That's what happened. Now, Donald Trump, along with One American News and Rudy Giuliani and the Gateway Pundit, all claim that these women, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, somehow fabricated these ballots. And the reason I know that those specific people have claimed that is because those are the groups that have been sued for defamation by Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss.
Okay.
Now, One American News actually settled for an undisclosed amount the defamation lawsuit filed by Moss and Freeman earlier, last year, I guess, back in May. So they had to pay. Rudy Giuliani, just a couple months ago, attempted to get the defamation lawsuit against him dismissed. The judge said, no, you're going to face trial for this, buddy.
I'm not sure how I feel about the use of their names, even in this broadcast. The reason that I didn't edit that out of the clip is because I honestly think that people who tend to lean progressive need to be on the lookout for these women in some way, need to have the knowledge of who they are specifically so that we can make appeals to the Justice Department to protect them. Thought about it for a while this morning. Genuinely wasn't sure which way I was going to go, but ultimately I saw how many people responded to that Truth Social rant, and I know the percentage of people that watch my streams that are conservative, which would be less than 1. Good. Sitting for them. This is for you. Contact the Justice Department. Tell them you want Trump dealt with for this. You want him arrested for this. He can be charged for multiple things at once. If you blow up a building and then go rob a bank, they don't say, we can't charge him for blowing up that building. We have to build this case about the bank robbery. That's nonsense. Similarly, there is no reason Trump cannot be arrested for this. He's intentionally endangering citizens. That is the definition of stochastic terrorism. That is an act of terrorism that he's just engaged in. And it must be taken seriously. Let's let this gentleman continue.
Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss get to take you to court. And then, as I mentioned, they've also filed a suit against the Gateway Pundit.
No. This is where we disagree. It's not that they can take him to court for defamation. This is beyond that. They said they were afraid of him. They are right to be afraid of him. Nancy Pelosi's husband, a man who has a great deal of money, a great deal of influence, he was attacked by one of these MAGA psychopaths in his home with a hammer. These ladies do not have a great deal of money. They do not have a great deal of influence. If they take Donald Trump to court over this, they paint a larger target on themselves. This is not a matter for the civil courts. This is a matter for the criminal courts. Trump has yet again broken the law. He has yet again endangered Americans. And he has yet again been allowed to do it. It must stop. It must stop. And it will not if Merrick Garland continues to think we don't give a damn. If he thinks that you don't care and I don't care, he will let another day pass where he collects a paycheck for doing nothing. This is not acceptable behavior. We need to make that clear. Link in the description. Contact the Justice Department. There is a form to fill out wherein you also give your opinion. Mention these women. Mention Trump's stochastic terrorism on Truth Social. What Farron has said quite correctly here is that Trump has been informed. Not that it should be needed, but regardless, he has been informed by well beyond the degree that should even be necessary. He has been informed that he got it wrong. I mean, he knew he was lying the whole time, but nonetheless, his lies were examined, and he was told that is not accurate. These women did nothing wrong. So when he has done this just now, it was with the knowledge of the truth. When he lied about them now, he knew what the truth was. He was told the truth by adults. The fact that he chose to yet again paint a target on their back needs to be dealt with by Merrick Garland immediately. Incidentally, these women should be put in witness protection. That is now necessary because of what our former president has done. Let's let him finish.
Now, with Donald Trump's statements right here, specifically naming this private citizen who is not a public official, right? She is not somebody in the spotlight. She is somebody, however, who has gotten repeated death threats from MAGA freaks out there because of the lies told about her and her daughter. Trump mentions her by name, makes all these wild accusations against her, the same accusations these other groups made. I expect very soon Donald Trump to be hit with another defamation lawsuit, as he should.
Lawsuit's not enough. Not enough.
This is unhinged. These are the rantings of a madman, but they're also very defamatory. So Ruby Freeman, if you haven't already talked to your lawyers, I suggest you do that, because this is a defamation lawsuit waiting to happen, and it's one that I personally think you could pretty easily win here.
All right. As I say, it does make me nervous to play their names on the stream. I don't like that he said them again and again, but I do want you to know them. Because it's necessary, I feel, that Merrick Garland understand that we are following this closely, that we see exactly what is going on, and that we will not forget about it like he keeps hoping we will. You go back to that viewer comment one more time. The time to slam Garland's inaction was about a year ago. Now think about what he's done since then, including what he did on January 2nd, which is try to get people to attack innocent election workers. Fairchild Creek is correct. The time was a year ago. The time is also now. Garland, right now, must act. Now the time has come to demand his removal for gross negligence and dereliction of duty. Also correct. The other person to write, I believe the link is also in the description. If it's not, I will update it. Your representative, tell them that exactly. Fairchild Creek has put it correctly. Say, you would like your representative to demand Garland's removal for gross negligence and dereliction of duty. This is where we are at. We will keep having the same problems until the Justice Department ceases to be two-tier, and that will only happen when we pressure them. It's unfortunate that it's on us, but it is on us. Now you know their names. If the next time you hear those names, you don't want it to be in an obituary, contact the Justice Department. Tell them that now is the time to arrest Trump because he is a danger to American citizens. If that were not enough, there was a fascinating reading of the January 6th transcripts that was done recently by a channel that is new to me. It is called Raw News and Politics. Looks like they got their start not too terribly long ago. I'm going to try to cool down a little bit because this gal did great work, and I don't want to sully the intro with what is genuine fury. Raw News and Politics did a in-depth reading of the January 6th transcripts and found something fascinating, which is that there is no way to view it where Trump did not have foreknowledge of what was going to happen, of the coup plot. And in fact, looks like Scott Perry from Pennsylvania's 10th, I believe, also knew this. Let's look at what she had to say.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. So there's a ton of new information being reported. This is all based on the Select Committee transcripts and their final report. So I'm trying to compile all of the most eyebrow-raising details, and I'm going to be sharing everything in various segments like I did yesterday about Cassidy Hutchinson. So first up is Donald Trump's fake electors plot. There are new conflicting stories about how it all came to be. Election-denying attorney Cleta Mitchell, who you guys have probably heard of, she told the committee that Utah Senator Mike Lee is the one who conceived of the plan and then disseminated the plan. She told the committee, quote, "There were a group of people who were discussing that. I don't know that it wasn't my idea. It was actually Mike Lee's idea."
Blaming each other.
So Mitchell also said that Lee referred to this alternate slate of electors as, quote, "the sweet spot." And this is in regard, what he meant was this was in regard to getting other Republicans on board. However, the committee's final report states that there were two businessmen from Texas who met with Trump about a week after the 2020 election. And the report says they're the ones who posited the idea of using fake electors to override the will of the voter. According to the committee's final report, Morgan Warsler and a man named John S. Robeson met with Trump in the White House on November 10th to try to push this idea of the fake electors.
Could not have two more 1920s general store owner sounding names. It's irrelevant, just thought I'd toss that in there.
And then Robeson even followed up with an email to, quote, explain the move forward plan for what we discussed. And even Trump's deputy chief of staff, Dan Scavino, later called Robeson's email, quote, batshit crazy. And I guess you have to give this guy
Good
credit,
Lord.
though, because
Dan Scavino, if Dan Scavino is telling you something's crazy, it's crazy.
instead of denying his involvement in the coup, Robeson is doubling down on this batshit crazy idea. He recently tweeted out, quote, I'm in the Jan 6th report. Sweet. Trump should have listened to me. And in June of 2022, Warsler tweeted out that he had the, quote, whole Trump team in Oval and, quote, state legislatures can choose the electors no matter what current state law or state courts say. So these guys aren't even trying to hide it. And you might ask, how did they come to talk with Trump? How did they end up at the White House? Once again, all roads lead back to Congressman Scott Perry. This guy is in it deep. He is in so much trouble.
I'm going to be looking
Apparently,
a lot closer at him.
that's how they know Trump. That's how they met him. They're connected to Scott Perry and other people within the Republican Party.
Fun fact, you want to know how investigative journalism works? This right here. That's a thread, and you pull at it. So you find out, okay, now we know these two guys which pitched the fake electors plot know Scott Perry. Then you ask, how do they know him? Then you look into their business dealing or whatever that answer is, you look for more detail. With Republicans, it just about never fails to turn up a crime. It is genuinely shocking. If you ever wonder why news people just seem bitter and pessimistic and furious a lot of the time, the more local you go, the more you'll get this. Unless they're so young, they don't even do this stuff. That's why. The injustice is maddening. It's maddening. But she's on fire. Let's let it keep on burning.
In Texas. So it's still unclear, which came first, these chickens or these illegal eggs. I mean, who originally conceived of this illegal scheme? What we do know is that Trump and some of his allies were directly involved in the plot, at least in the state of Nevada. The committee interviewed two fake electors from Nevada, the Republican State Party leader, Michael McDonald, not that Michael McDonald, and also a man named Jim Graffenreid, I think is how you pronounce it. He's a Republican National Committee member. These were two of the fake electors in Nevada. According to the report, each of these men pleaded the fifth hundreds of times when they were interviewed by the committee. But the evidence shows that Trump and others in his orbit were directly involved in calling the shots. And the fake electors planning apparently began before the election even took place. Days before, the committee was able to obtain texts, emails, they said, internal GOP memos, handwritten documents even, which show that, for example, McDonald had a conference call with Trump, Mark Meadows, his chief of staff, and Rudy Tootie Giuliani, as well as Eric Trump. This was the day after the election. Following that meeting, McDonald texted a contact and he said, quote, They want full attack mode. We're going to have a war room meeting in about an hour. And in one of DeGraff and Reed's texts,
pause it there for a second. So all of this is to say, this is before any of these court cases were decided. Probably, day after the election, before they're filed. So even assuming all of his actions are in the best light, he's coming up with plans for how to get around the results of an election before he's even had a chance for the courts to determine whether or not any of this is true, before his own Justice Department had a chance to investigate any of his wild claims. It all speaks to the fact that his wild claims were just that, and he knew it.
He all but admits that Trump didn't really win. He and others were going back and forth. They were discussing whether or not they thought that the Republican Secretary of State for Nevada would sign off on their alternative electors. So Graff and Reed writes in this text chain, quote, "She might do a lot of things, but sending a slate of Republican electors without them being clearly the winners of the popular vote is not one of them." So they knew that Trump didn't win, or they at least doubted it, the popular vote in Nevada, but they continued to push this unconstitutional plan. They met and signed a phony certification anyway.
By itself, that's a crime. By itself, that is a crime. We're waiting on charges for these people. Problem is, if you charge them, you have to charge the people they conspired with. And those people are powerful. And they, in America, the unwritten rule is they're untouchable. Unless we stop putting up with it. Again, DOJ link in the description.
This guy who just said in the text message, yeah, I don't know if she's going to sign off on it, given that, we don't know that he actually won. But he went and put his name on the dotted line saying, yes, Trump actually won this state.
Point of contention. Popular vote. I realize she's saying popular vote in the state. Could be argued to say that he was talking about popular vote in the country. That's different. You can be president without winning the popular vote. That is a flaw in our system, but them's the rules we agreed to when we participated in the election ourselves. No Republican president has won the popular vote, as a matter of fact. Gosh, since the 90s. Did George H.W. Bush win the popular vote? I don't believe so, but I have to check that. But it's been longer than a lot of folks' lifetimes. It's certainly been, 30 years? They rely on gerrymandering. They rely on the rules being bent in their favor to get in office at all.
These people have far more culpability than others, in my opinion. They cynically went along with something that they knew to be false, strictly for their own political gain and their agenda.
Get them.
There are true believers out there. And at least with the true believers, they're just gullible, right? They're not evil. They just got played. They just fell for another one of Trump's lies. But these guys knew the truth, and they committed potential crimes on Trump's behalf. So I have no empathy for them, no sympathy. Whatever happens, they deserve it. They all need to go down. Now, if they can flip some of these people, you've got it in writing, which is one of the things everyone has said. Trump doesn't do anything in writing. You still don't have Trump texting, but you have people putting him in the room and in the conversations. So if they can get enough people to corroborate each other's stories, plus they have this evidence, these text messages of people speaking freely at the time, thinking that there weren't going to be any consequences for their actions. You get enough of them, a jury will convict.
Absolutely true. link to that video is in the description. It was Raw News and Politics. It's a new channel as well. I mean, she just did a heck of a job. Well, we focus so much on Trump today because it's important that we not forget this. Because that is how, as I always say, these cover-ups work in our government. In America, that is how Republican crime gets hidden. Time plus the American attention span. Enough of us forget, or enough of us decide we're just not going to say anything about it. We're not going to rock the boat. And then when there is a lull in interest, that is when the prosecutor will do a very brief press conference where they say, yada, 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 we have concerns about this, yada, 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 we couldn't find enough evidence. Because they chose not to look for it. It was pretty clear Garland hadn't collected the evidence that the January 6th committee had access to. They were surprised to learn it when the Jan 6 committee first rolled out their findings. There is a serious conversation to be had in the happy epilogue to this story, if we get one, about charges for Merrick Garland. Genuinely. But first, we have to deal with the people who are actively trying to get other Americans killed. Donald Trump is number one. DOJ contact linked in the description. If you want to know how effective just one person is, did a video yesterday with Sam Cedar talking about that. Incredibly effective. Incredibly effective. The Department of Justice is not used to being contacted at all. If 20 people write them emails, they're going to be shocked. It's not trained in the American consciousness to actually reach out to our officials. It's certainly not trained in the progressive consciousness. We are always told that the only way we can get things done is if 10,000 of us gather in the street and do a march. A lot's changed since Martin Luther King's day. Write the damn email. We cannot let this guy walk around free anymore. You don't have to tell Merrick Garland you think he ought to be in prison. I do think that. But when I write him in 5 minutes, I'm not going to mention that. That'll be to my representative after Trump is in handcuffs. What I'm going to write Merrick Garland is that Trump ought to be in handcuffs. I'm going to mention the two ladies. I'm going to mention his Truth Social messages. I'm going to write him tomorrow as well. And I'm going to write him the next day. You don't have to do it that often. Write one email. Let him see that at least a handful of Americans care, if for no other reason, so that you can look your kids and grandkids in the eyes, should you have them, so that you can look your fellow Americans in the eyes and know that you didn't abandon them. You did your part in the fight. Write the email. To give it more of a positive spin, on this channel, we're starting to do something called the Citizen of the Day. If you do write an email, let me know in the comments. I like to hold up people, hold up high examples of people who have done their part, and also so that other people can see that they're not alone in this fight. We are going to cover the other very important piece of news today. That's the Kevin McCarthy disaster and the Speaker of the House vote. We're going to be covering that live at noon. I hope you'll be back to join me. If you enjoyed this video, or maybe not enjoyed but found it useful, then I would appreciate a like if you have the free finger strength. And if you'd like to hear more, certainly subscribe. This has been Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. My name's Jake.